today I thought I'd show you the strategy I was using for the Guild Mega Boss Battle EX. Obviously only uploading this now because since this was a competition I didn't want to give any possible help to rival guilds that we were going up against. We ended up getting second, which I'm really pleased with, really happy with what my guild did there. The framework for this strategy is a JP guide that I'll link down in the description. Uses most of the same units. I changed one unit out, and I also optimized the strategy in a lot of different ways that you'll be able to see if you watch both. It has Ruff as the defense dropper, in my opinion by far the best defense dropper you can use, because he not only drops defense, he also does follow-ups, he also has high crit potential, and he also has a really strong hit for the weak point. Most of the defense droppers out there, like Full Ranger Corvus and Robin Hood, they kind of lack that really strong option on the weak point, whereas Ruff has that. And also he has follow-ups that can hit on the weak point, so his damage potential is super high, and it's super fun seeing how often he can crit in a run. It has Solo. He's not actually just here for the damage, though his damage is really good. What's most important, especially in EX where the damage gets really crazy, is his Zenithian Slash, removing the Martial and Breath boosts that Sora will give himself, because if he gets those up, then it's very difficult for Mont to survive. And speaking of Mont, he's a cover tank, has that heavy Zam resist, and also he has offensive options that can lower physical resistance, which supercharges the damage of Solo, Ruff, and in this case Santa Elena. I got Young Terry for that AoE physical potency up and the healing, obviously nobody else can do that. And then finally I have Santa Elena. I'm a really big fan of Santa Elena. Even before she got her Blossom, she's been amazing in PvE essentially, usually due to her ability to manipulate turn order with her agility dropping and agility boosting of herself. In this though, since her Blossom gave her that extra crit potential and a new attack, it actually made her really good for this boss battle. In the JP guide they use Rickard, which makes sense, you know, he boosts in potency. He's Sizz type and Sora's weak to Sizz, but I actually found that Santa Elena, for mine at least, which is max awake, her crit potential and her Q damage hitting so many tiles made her even better than Rickard in most cases, and just really fun to use. And she also, if you have her Awakening 3, she gets a 1.5x boost occasionally on even turns. So with that 1.5 boost with the crit potential, her damage can go crazy, which you'll see later in this guide. But yeah, it took a decent amount of work to actually get this optimized, because the damage is so high in EX. Obviously Mon has to take a lot of turns off to cover instead of attacking like he would on the lower stages. You can't really face tank many of Sora's attacks anymore, so you actually need to move units out the way and stuff, and so finding a way to get everyone in the same area so you can maintain the buffs was difficult. Also adjusting the agility order so that certain units get out the way of other units before they move is important. But there's a lot of agility flipping that goes on with these units. Obviously Ruff and Young Terry, they start with agility up but then lose that on turn 3, whereas Solo is buffing his agility every turn and Mont's buffing his agility every time he covers. So making sure that all works and that no unit is stepping on each other's toes was pretty difficult, but I did manage to end up getting it to work. I also managed to squeeze in some extra Show No Mercy boosts to up the damage. But yeah, I ended up pretty satisfied with the strategy I ended up settling on. This one you're actually seeing now, I actually only came up with 5 days to go on the boss battle. I had a slightly different one before this that threw in an extra physical resistance chance with Mon, but it included some extra bind RNG and it didn't allow you to keep the buffs on everyone, so I moved away from that. But yeah, I mostly had fun with this. As you know, obviously I'm a big fan of optimizing PvE content. As you can tell by the Blossoming Door Hexagonal guides with the Blossoming Door clears that I post on my channel. And so I'd like to see this Guild Mega Boss Battle return in the future, but there's a lot of quality of life improvements they could make, particularly with knowing what actual guild members have gone for the day, because outside of just recording this, like screenshotting the scores and then checking them against them the next day, is kind of difficult to tell who's gone. So for guild leaders particularly guild leaders without Discord, anyone that any guild didn't have Discord during this, it must have been an absolute nightmare to actually try and coordinate anything. We do have a Discord thankfully, but even with that it was still pretty difficult to tell what was going on half the time. So that's one big improvement they could make. I'd also say that I mean, look at that damage from Elena there. That's about 100k, I think. That's the damage potential she has just on an off turn. You know, no weak point showing. She can do that. But yeah, this was pretty hectic at the start. Obviously, from the start, we decided we want a really high score, so we wanted to optimize our damage for every single difficulty. But our guild was getting through the difficulty pretty quickly, so we'd optimize them for beginner, and then the next day we're already on to the next difficulty. We need to start optimizing for that, and so trying to get optimizations out in time for when the difficulties were arriving was pretty tough. But then when we got to EX, we had 10 days of that, which is pretty boring, repeating the same fight over and over again for 10 days, particularly if you've got your strategy figured out. It's essentially just a case of going through the motions, which isn't the most exciting thing in the world. So a suggestion maybe they could do is, instead of doing the fight over and over again, it should be treated as, maybe you get beginner for 3 days, you can go as many times as you like, and your highest score gets recorded. So that means that, well, if you get a really high score on your first try and you don't want to try anymore, then you only need to do it once. There's no pressure to go every single day. But it also means that if you went and you got bad RNG, then it wouldn't necessarily ruin your chances. You could go again and try and improve that score as many times as you wanted. And they could do that 3 days for beginner, 3 days for intermediate, and so on and so forth. There was also a suggestion from a guildmate that they could have different bosses with different weaknesses, so that you could actually split your guild off into fighting different bosses that were more suited to the box they had. If they had a box full of Wush and Zam units, then you could send them with the boss to speak to Wush and Zam, as opposed to just having one boss where, depending on the weaknesses in the box they have, some guild members are going to excel and some aren't. And I think they're both good suggestions. Another awkward thing was the fact that the boss would die and just respawn over and over again. It meant that if the boss, say, had like 50k health left, it meant that one person in the guild was actually going to have their score severely lowered. Like, say, for me, for instance, I was probably averaging about 1.15, 1.1 million score every time. So if I had to go and kill that boss, then that would be essentially 1 million score left on the table. Obviously that can be avoided somewhat with coordination, but again, given the features they actually have within the game for guilds to communicate, that's actually pretty difficult to coordinate. If you don't have Discord, I'd say it's impossible to coordinate. I actually didn't end up killing the boss a single time, because I'm a bit of a score whore, as I called myself, but that was mostly because I knew this strat with the Ruff and with Elena, the potential was super high. I didn't really ever want to waste that potential by finishing off a boss that, say, had 900k health left, and then I turn out to get a score of 1.3 million or something, because then that's 400k left on the table. But yeah, so if they made it so that it's just the boss has full health every time and you just record your highest score versus it, that would remove that awkward instance of having to kill a super low health boss as well. I saw in Ortega's where he got the JP feedback guide that it didn't seem like the JP players actually enjoyed the Guild Mega Boss battle all that much. I can't exactly remember why they didn't, but that could be a reason that it maybe doesn't return in the future. But as I say, if it does, I'd like to see some quality of life improvements. But overall, I had a lot of fun with it, and I'm glad my guild did so well. But yeah, I think that is all I have to say about it. I will let you enjoy the rest of this guide, and you can enjoy listening to the sound of Ruff and Elena critting the soul out of Sorrow. Thank you.